Hey guys, it's Biggs. Now here we are. We're going into part 2 today of the one and only Segrest Farms. Now today, we're going to be doing something a little bit out there, a little bit different, but as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a multi-portioned video series because this place is so over the top, it couldn't be contained in one video or 2 videos, maybe not even 5 videos. We don't even know. So we're going to start off today with part 2. Part 2 is going to be basically I'm going to be having a discussion while we drove around Florida with the one and only Miss Sandy Moore about the history of Segrest Farms. So I hope you'll enjoy. Now, before we get started on part 2, there's something we need to talk about. Now, if you guys have not seen part 1 of the video series, I suggest you check it out. It's either up here or it's up here. I don't really know. Check out part 1, and all what I'm going to quickly say here is going to make some more sense. Now, you guys that did see part 1 know that we started out, Sandy and I, she showed me her facility in Gibsonton, Florida, and that facility's primary task is the rearing of the common pleco. Now that, if you guys go back and watch that video and you read into some of the comments, that kind of made a lot of people upset in regards to the staggering numbers of common plecos that are being reared every single year and put into the pet trade. Now, I thought, let's go and stop before we go and get to the next video. Let's get some education out there. Okay, so I went directly to the Queen herself. I went directly to Sandy Moore. And there was a reason that I put that video first. That was the #1 video, the first section out of many parts that's going to happen for the Segrest series. And I wanted that to be the first one to get that discussion started so you can really see how Segrest is, how they react to global things, North American things. Sandy's very, very much involved around protecting our fish hobby, your fish hobby, for everybody. She's very, very involved globally. So I reached out to her and I thought, hey Sandy, let's talk about this, because a lot of people were upset about that, which I expected and she expected, and these are some of her words. She says, the points that are brought up by your audience are 100% valid. She agrees with all those comments. So she says, let me take a swing at answering them. She said she's been on a mission to replace Florida plecos with Ancestris for well over a decade. That's the one that you guys all recommended everybody should be doing. It makes more sense, right? It makes sense to me, it makes sense to you. Trust me, it makes sense to her as well. However, there's reasons why it hasn't happened. And she honestly has very, very little hope in North America that it ever will happen, because North America, as we'll talk about, is vastly different than, say, European or Asian markets. Okay? The Florida pleco egg masses are harvested. They produce a ton of eggs, and they are pulled out of the native waterways. Okay? This is a non-endemic, a non-native Florida fish that has somehow made it out into the wild. Probably not by the pet trade, more than likely due to the hurricanes and stuff like that and dispersion. When all the waters come, stuff gets moved around. So it happens. Regardless, that fish has been in the wilds of Florida for well over 25, 30 years, maybe even longer. And it is very, very well established. However, it is not posing the massive threat in that area that it does in some other areas of the world where that species would not have any predators whatsoever. Like the devastations of some of the springs in Florida have had some problems, and some of the areas down in, say, Mexico and in Asia where this thing has no predators whatsoever. But in Florida, there are other animals, some large turtles, and there's some alligators and things like that are kind of keeping the population somewhat in check. So we also need to make very, very clear that Segrest is in no way, shape, or form breeding the common pleco. They are not, they never have. They are not breeding them. What they are doing is they are taking these egg masses out of the wild, collectors are getting them for them, and they are getting them out of the wild for them, and then they are raising these egg masses for the pet trade. So they're taking them out of the wild, otherwise they'd become more. Thousands and thousands and thousands would be released in the wild every year. They are one of the farms that is taking these large numbers out of the wild system and putting back into the pet trade. Okay? Now the other facet is the Ancestris that we talked about. That is a good one. That's the species that everybody's talking about. Everybody recommends that's a great aquarium fish. We agree with you 100%. However, the Ancestris does not have anywhere near the same fecundity, and they are exceptionally slower growing compared to the common pleco in Florida waters. They easily reach 1 inch, and then they spend the next several months adding girth, but very, very little length. So they don't get to a saleable size. It takes 5-6 times longer to rear one. And due to their slower growth rate, their price is significantly higher than the common Florida pleco. Makes sense. Now, the other, and this is the one that everybody needs to understand, the North American consumers of the pet industry. Now, that's not saying each one of you that's watching these videos. The people that are watching my videos are a bit more specialized fish keepers, a bit more basement breeders, big time hobbyists, you got multiple tanks. That's not the total picture. The total picture of the pet trade in North America is hundreds and thousands of households that have one aquarium. And one aquarium, they go to one store. They go to some of the big box stores, and they go and they buy, and they want the cheapest. They're not the hobbyists that are spending a couple $100 on an L number 25 or 27 or whatever it is to get that super ultra fancy thing. That's not these hobbyists that we're talking about. We're talking about the North American trade. And the reality is, in North America, we are very, very price conscious. And that fish, because the price difference between something like that and an Ancistrus, it'll probably never happen. And we could say we want it to happen and do as much as we can as hobbyists. We're doing our part. I'm trying to do my part by running this channel, giving some education. Each one of you is now an ambassador as well that's got to be out there sending that message to people. But the bottom line is the big box stores that demand, they always want lower price for higher margin, and they want the cheaper fish all the time. And that's just the sad reality. So you get what you pay for. And if they would never ever sell, if consumers actually demanded the Ancistrus over the common pleco, they would drop the common pleco in a heartbeat. It's just not reality. I apologize, guys, but that's direct. Those are some honest, hard truths for you. Let's get into part 2.
Segrest Farms started in 1963 in Belle Glade, Florida, in Elwin and Carol's Segrest garage. Elwin and Carol were educators that had moved from Mississippi to Florida to Belle Glade to teach school to make more money than they could have made in Mississippi. And Elwin raised angelfish in his garage to supplement their income. She made him move the fish out to the garage after he had fish tanks planted on every bare surface in the house, including the back of the toilet seat, or the toilet tank. He started raising angelfish and selling them to Fred Kashu. Kashu transported fish up to New York by train in those days up to Paramount.
This would have been using those metal cans, those shipping cans.
Right. So Elwin was really good at raising angelfish, and there were a few strains that Fred wanted him specifically to produce, and so he was able to transfer from being an educator to farming angelfish full time. In the early 70s, he moved over to Parrish, Florida, and he and Ross Sokoloff got in business together and started shipping to the first group of pet specialty retailers, the first chain called Petcoa.
Okay.
And they developed some interesting strains of fish, like marble kissing gouramis.
Okay.
And sold to that chain, and they were really good at selling to them. The big lesson from that partnership is they had all of their eggs in the Petcoa basket. Petcoa went belly up, and then so did they. So their partnership dissolved after Petcoa went belly up. Then they became fierce competitors. Elwin had this vision of becoming a national wholesaler at a time when every other wholesaler was a regional. They had regional distribution. They distributed as far as their trucks could go out in one day and come back.
Okay.
And so Elwin went to Singapore and learned how to properly and effectively tranquilize fish to control the water volume in the bags so that we could pack fish by air.
And control the amount that they breathe, thereby the waste production and everything. Yeah.
Right. So he built his business on freight included prices on airlines. That was before the days of deregulation. So all of the airlines charged the same amount of freight, no matter how far or how close it was. So he figured hostess is his friend Paul Norton in Louisiana, and they had been friends since the 50s. Paul Norton ran a regional wholesaler, dry goods and fish distributor out of, I believe, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and had invested in a big trucking system with Hills. And very quickly after he'd spent a whole bunch of money on buying new trucks to distribute Hills went direct to retailer.
Okay.
And so Paul gave up on being a distributor. He and his wife and his kids moved to Florida to become fish farmers. And Paul sent out a letter to all of his customers in Louisiana saying, if you want good fish, contact Elwin Segrest. And that really put Elwin on the map.
Okay.
And from there, from those meager beginnings, we have grown to become a large company, largest wholesaler in the world that I am aware of.
So there you have it, guys. From truly humble beginnings to a globally recognized leader in the industry. Now, Sandy herself, she has her own humble beginnings. She's only started at Segrest back in 1992. She's worked absolutely every aspect of the company from the ground floor all the way up. And she worked in that until she was actually at time of Elwin's retirement when he bestowed upon her the title of president back in 2015. Under her leadership, Sandy has been an absolute pivotal role in steering the company through challenging times and uncertainty, has made Segrest Farms an absolute worldwide, not only known for their quality, but for their leadership in developing the best management practices that set the standard for the industry globally. She has and continues to serve on boards globally that impact not only truly aquatic animals, but also the entire pet industry as a whole. She's an executive board member of the Ornamental Fish International, accessory board member for the Project Piaba. This woman is involved all over the world in every aspect. So with Sandy at the helm and on watch all the time, I think we're all given a bit of a gift of security knowing that she is actively working diligently behind the scenes to ensure that we can all enjoy our aquatic pets for many, many more years to come. So I myself am truly honored to call her my friend. And as always, my friends, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Till next time, stay safe. Cheers.